Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 354. Recently, I have seen a bit of a concerning trend. It would seem like a bunch of people are willing to let the Democrats off the hook for their role with Jeffrey Epstein all of a sudden just because Trump is gone. Well, you're not going to find that shit here, folks. I plan on holding the people in power, which is now the Democrats, feet to the fire the same way we did Trump's. Now, anyone who thinks that the incoming administration has its hands clean when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, well, I say think again. Plenty of people who are named for the transition team have received money from Jeffrey Epstein at one point. Sure, most of them gave it back. And that's good, that's great. But why were you receiving money from Jeffrey Epstein in the first place? Especially while at the same time acting as if you were champions of the Me Too movement. The hypocrisy, it stinks, it smells, and we will always put it on blast here on the podcast. I don't care what letter you have next to your name. Republican or Democrat, independent, or anything in between. If you are taking money from Jeffrey Epstein, even if you returned it, you have questions to answer. And in tonight's episode, we're going to read an article from ABC News that talks about some of the Democrats that Jeffrey Epstein donated to. With the transfer of power upon us, and Joe Biden looking like he's going to be the next president of the United States, barring some legal challenges, are we supposed to just ignore the fact that Joe Biden is also credibly accused of sexual assault by Tara Reade? Should we just ignore that and shelve that and not talk about it because it doesn't move the political sticks in the way you're trying to move them? Well, if you're looking for that kind of shit, this podcast is not for you. I am going to be raging against the machine, just like usual. Be it Joe Biden, Donald Trump, or anybody else who was in that office. Especially if they had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, we know about Acosta and his role with Trump and how he ended up losing his job for his shit work he did during the Jeffrey Epstein case. Well, John Kerry received money from Jeffrey Epstein. They're talking about a cabinet position for John Kerry. Are we going to have somebody initiate an investigation like they did against Acosta? Is Julie Brown going to do it? Or is it going to be left up to us, independent content creators that aren't carrying water for either side of the aisle? I have a funny feeling it'll be left in our hands. So as we move forward with this whole transfer of power, and we move from Trump to Biden, keep in mind during your jubilant celebrations that it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. What do you think? Biden's going to show up and sit in the Oval Office and everything's going to be hunky-dory? Did they arrest Jeffrey Epstein when Biden was in office with Obama? Did they go after him? No, they didn't. So, what makes people think that all of a sudden there's going to be this huge interest in making sure this case gets brought across the finish line? That is the one thing I care about at this point, that this case continues on the trajectory that it's on. Is Bill Clinton going to have sway with the Democrats now? Is Hillary Clinton? Are they going to try and bury this shit the same way people thought Trump would? Well, folks, those are questions that have to be asked. And I guess we'll get those answers as we wind our way through this. But if anybody thinks there's going to be this huge change now that Trump is gone and Biden is in office, you're wrong. There's going to be policy change, of course, but the same fat cats are going to be eating at the same table, and you and I are going to be getting the short end of the stick. Our article today is from abcnews.go.com, and this is an article that came out in July 12th of 2019. So, back when Epstein was first arrested, blah, 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 for the second time. Headline: Jeffrey Epstein donated to several Democrats through the 1990s and early 2000s. The decades-old donations raise questions about handling matters years later. Well, maybe those are the questions it raises with you, but for me, it is the decision-making process. These are some of the most powerful people in the world. No, cut that. The most powerful people in the world. And they don't know that Jeffrey Epstein is out skanking around being a scumbag? I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Okay? What, the intelligence agencies don't pull any of these senators to the side and say, hey, look, dude, this is a bad guy, all right? This is trouble. You should probably avoid him. Their inner office security doesn't do that? And if that's the case, and they're such ignorant and so incapable of finding out who somebody like Epstein is, do we really want these people running the world? The same like I said with Trump. I don't want anybody with the stench of Jeffrey Epstein anywhere near running my life. And I don't care if it's people in the Biden administration, and I don't care if it's people in the Trump administration. Everybody involved with Epstein must answer for it. This article was authored by Soo Rin Kim. Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier, pedophile, charged with sex trafficking, has been a prolific donor to various Democratic campaigns and party committees over the past couple decades, including contributions to some who are now calling for the resignation of a Trump cabinet member who cut a deal for Epstein in a similar case more than a decade earlier. So when that was all happening, I found it laughable. Right? We know that Chuck Schumer and John Kerry and all these other clowns took money from Jeffrey Epstein. Furthermore, we know that Nexium was operating right under Charles Schumer's nose and that Kristen Gillibrand's father had connections to them. Did anything happen? Was there an investigation? Huge media exposés? No, of course not. Because it was all about politics. And for me, that's the thing that I dislike about Trump the most. The fact that everything was laser focused on him and everything else was falling apart around our ears. And the people who were supposed to keep Trump in check were too busy dicking around to make sure that everything else wasn't falling apart. And that was my biggest problem with all of it. The laser focus on a temporary employee like a president is just mind-boggling to me. When anyone who knows anything about politics understands that the second your guy loses, it's time to move on and get ready for the midterm elections. You want to make sure that the president who was elected is limp-wristed and he can't get any of his policies through? Go win the House and the Senate. One of the biggest beneficiaries of Epstein's contributions was then Senate hopeful Hillary Clinton, who received $20,000 from him in 1999 through her joint fundraising committee with the Democratic Party, according to Federal Election Commission filings. Bill Clinton's presidential campaign also received $1,000 from Epstein in 1992. And not only that, we know that Gerald Lefcourt is on the record saying that Bill Clinton was one of the first major donors to the Clinton Global Initiative. We're talking millions of dollars, okay? The relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and the Clintons is rock solid. They were homies, okay? These weren't just associates. They weren't just rubbing elbows at the bar. Epstein was at their daughter's wedding. Epstein was visiting the White House while Bill Clinton was in it. Are you kidding me right now? Ghislaine Maxwell gets invited to a private vegetarian dinner with Bill Clinton in a city of 30 million people, or in the outlying area at least? She's the one who gets the invite, huh? Now, I haven't really went as hard on the Clintons as I planned to, and that's because I didn't want to get caught up in all the divisiveness of this election. And now that this election is over, I'm going to be going hard as hell on the Clintons. Because I'm tired of them getting a pass, I'm tired of bitch-ass Bill Clinton getting a pass, and I'm certainly tired of Hillary Clinton running around like she is not an epic criminal. She is. The Clintons, along with President Donald Trump, were among Epstein's vast network of high-profile rich and famous people who helped the former Wall Street insider, pedophile, turned private wealth manager, child abuser, rise to prominence in the early 2000s. What? We know that that's not the case anymore. The early 2000s, this guy's been prominence before that. He was at the White House in the 90s with Bill Clinton. We know that he was running around with Robert Maxwell and Les Wexner way before just mentioned here in the article, the early 2000s. Are you kidding me? He was already engaged in being an asset and running his honey trap. You see, up until recently, all of these legacy media outlets had no effing idea what they were talking about with Jeffrey Epstein, and they still don't. The only time they ever come close to the mark is when they pilfer work from somebody, an investigative journalist like Melissa Cronin, or somebody who's really dove into this, Conchita Sarnoff. Then they sound like they know what they're talking about. But without having an actual expert to help them, they bumble around and they don't even know what they're talking about. All of these resources, all of this money, and they still can't get it right. John Kerry, Hillary Clinton's successor as former President Barack Obama's Secretary of State, also was a recipient of Epstein's donations during his time as a U.S. Senator in Massachusetts in the 90s and early 2000s. Now, John Kerry is up for a cabinet position in the Biden administration. Are we going to go as hard on him as we did on Acosta? I expect it from you. If you don't want to be considered biased and you're involved in this case, and this case really means something to you, you are going to go just as hard as you would when it was the other folks in charge. You're going to make sure that you're producing content that draws a light to this. Now me, I've savaged the Trump administration in the past year. I savaged them between Mnuchin and Trump's ties and his well wishes to Ghislaine Maxwell. Look, I have been very clear about how I feel about all of this. If you were involved with this scumbag, you're in my sights. And the second your name gets mentioned in the news and I can vet that information and I can cross-check it and make sure that it has legs, you're getting put on blast right here on this podcast. And I don't care about your political affiliation. I'm so tired of the two tribes. Oh, he's a Democrat. Oh, he's great. Oh, he's a Republican. He's great. No, all right? Human beings like the rest of us. Flawed. All of them. Very flawed. They all bleed the same way we do, and they all put their pants on the same way we do in the morning. Stop with the hero worship. Kerry's spokesperson told ABC News in a statement that Kerry hasn't had an active campaign account or political operation for more than a decade and did not know Epstein personally. I think that's a lie. You know why I think that's a lie? Why was John Kerry pictured with Epstein's housekeepers if he doesn't know Epstein? Are we going to dig into that? Can we get a huge, vast investigation into that, Miami Herald? Or is your bias going to show? Me? Oh, I'm digging. Don't worry. I actually have contacts in Massachusetts. I'm talking to people right now about John Kerry and about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And if you don't think I'm going to be putting it on blast and I'm going to be talking about it, you're wrong. It is time for all of these power players and wannabe so-called members of polite society to get their just desserts. Obviously, donations received in 1991 and 2002 were spent years before any of this came to light, Kerry's spokesperson said. Back when he did have an active campaign, if donors were convicted of crimes, the campaign gave away those contributions to charity. And this small amount was likely given away in 2008. See how they're trying to brush it off? They're just brushing it off. And that's all because politics. It's all about the dreaded R and the D. If this was somebody on the other side and it was one of their foes, it would be the connections to Epstein are so tight you can't even dismiss them. Well, guess what? The connections are tight. Why were you taking pictures with Epstein's housekeepers, John Kerry? If you don't know Jeffrey Epstein, what, they just showed up one day and the two housekeepers donated money to your campaign or something and you decided to take a picture with them? Where was that picture taken, John Kerry? Boy, John Kerry has some stuff to answer to, folks. And like I said, I know that the legacy media isn't going to hold him accountable. And the sad fact is, I know a lot of independent content creators probably won't either. But me? Oh yeah, I'm going in hard on John Kerry, especially if he gets a cabinet position. Believe it. Mark it down. Take it to the bank. Epstein was just one of hundreds of thousands who gave to the campaigns, not someone in our orbit. Safe to say, he's not in our Rolodex, the spokesperson added. Well, it's safe to say you were in his. So, pretty funny that you're in his Rolodex, John Kerry, but he's not in yours. Is John Kerry being truthful? Or is John Kerry giving us the Bill Clinton okey doke? I'm going to go with the old okey doke. John Kerry is a career scuzzy politician. The absolute problem that I'm always complaining about here on the podcast is embodied in guys like John Kerry, lifelong politicians, movers and shakers in the back room. And meanwhile, they don't care about you. Similar, Hillary Clinton spokesperson Nick Merrill told ABC News that JFC has been defunct for over a decade and referred to the Democratic Party. ABC News has reached out to the DSCC. Hillary Clinton won't even... I'm not responding to that. I don't even need to respond to that. My campaign was defunct. Talk to the Democratic Party. I'm so tired of the Clintons getting a pass. For all these years, they have gotten a pass. And don't even come at me with, well, what about Rush Limbaugh or Fox News? I don't care about those outlets. Very small, in an echo chamber. And when you're speaking to an echo chamber, what does that mean? You're just speaking to people who think the same way you do anyway. Where was the legacy media holding Hillary Clinton to account? Where was the legacy media asking her about her trips to Zorro Ranch with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, what, you forgot about those? I haven't. So you see, folks, let's not get too carried away here, okay? Let's not let the jubilation get ahead of us. We have hard work left to do here in this case. And now, with the transfer of power, there's a whole new cast of characters for us to go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that they were not related with Jeffrey Epstein in any manner. And so far, it's not looking so good for Mr. Biden. Bill Clinton, through his press secretary, released a statement when Epstein's indictment was unsealed on Monday, saying the former president knows nothing about the terrible crimes Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to in Florida some years ago, or those with which he was recently been charged in New York. Yeah, I'm sure you and Ghislaine didn't have a chat about it. You know, when she was your gumad. Remember that? Remember they were talking about how Bill Clinton and Ghislaine Maxwell were engaged in a relationship, a bit of a tryst? I'm sure you guys never had any pillow talk about what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. Bill Clinton is an epic liar, and one day this guy is going to be held responsible for all of the shit he has done. I don't know when that day will be. Maybe it'll be 100 years in the future when the historians pore over all of the history. But at some point, sometime, Bill Clinton is going to have to be held responsible for what he has been engaged in for his whole entire political career. ABC News reached out to representatives for Bill Clinton, specifically about the donation, but they did not immediately respond. Yeah, the donations are fine and well, and that gives us an in here to talk about it. But what about the many trips to Zorro Ranch that he says he was never on? What about the trips to the island? Is the legacy media ever going to call him out on that? Are they ever going to initiate a huge report? Let me tell you what, if I had the resources that Julie K. Brown has, it would be on, folks. It would be on. I don't have anywhere near her resources. And we're today like 406 straight days here on the podcast with a new episode, at least one in each of all of those days. If I had their resources, I would not stop. I'd be working this case 20 hours a day, digging in holes, kicking over rocks, and you name it. But it seems there's no interest this way. It seems there's no interest in what Bill Clinton really was doing with Jeffrey Epstein. So it's time to shift the narrative. And that's what we're going to be doing here on the podcast. Expect a lot on Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein moving forward. The decades-old donations raise broader questions about how such contributions should be handled when, years later, the donor is ensnared in controversy. Here's an idea. Vet the people that are donating money to you. All of your political bagmen should be vetted. And that's exactly what Epstein was, $150,000 in donations to the Democrats. That's a bagman, folks, just like Ron Burkle. Ava Nodi, former Assistant General Counsel at Federal Election Commission and currently a Senior Director at Campaign Legal Center, told ABC News that it's become increasingly common for contributions that were uncontroversial when made to be questioned retroactively. Well, here's the thing about that as well. Stop with all of the shitty political money. How much money was wasted this political cycle? How many of us and people you know could have used some of that money? We still don't even have a stimulus. We don't have help for the unemployed. This virus is wreaking havoc once again, and the dickheads in Congress and the Senate can't get it together. They're too busy infighting to work a package out for you. So don't, question retroactively. Why don't you do it when you're first getting the donations? Vet that shit. Furthermore, why is it that so much outside money pours into all of these senator races? No more outside money. If you're running for senator in West Virginia, all of the money must be raised in state. Why is that so difficult? Why won't they make that a law? You know why they won't make it a law. Because it's the whole entire thing is rigged against you. And they want to make sure that they keep having all of the upper hands. All that dark money that comes in, what, that means they're not beholden to the people that give them that money? Of course they are. I'm so tired of it. I'm really sick and tired of it, folks. I can't even express to you how much it annoys me. Whether that's fair depends in part on the nature and the amount of the contributions, Nodi said. So it's certainly fair to ask questions when the contributor is officially a major fundraiser for a national political party. That's what Epstein was. You're not going to package it any other way. Epstein was flipping money left and right to Democrat politicians. Sure, he donated like 18 grand to Republicans. That's cool. He didn't need to donate to Republicans. He probably had all kinds of blackmail information on them. But when it comes to the Democrats, there's no denying it. There's no spinning it, and there's no ignoring it. Epstein was a huge bagman for the Democrats for years. It seems less fair in the case of a one-off contribution or someone who didn't have any meaningful personal interaction with the candidate or party. Yeah, Nodi, go ahead and try and cover that up. Just go ahead and try and cover that up. Make sure, you assuage it and massage it so it doesn't look so bad for your guy. See, every single time we read one of these articles and we have one of these crooked-ass political hacks that talk to us, I roll my eyes so much I fear they're going to be stuck in the top of my head. Epstein appeared in court Monday afternoon following his sudden arrest over the weekend and pleaded not guilty to charges from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York that he, from about 2002 to 2005, sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls at his homes in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, among other locations. All of those locations, by the way, your good friend, Slick Willie, Bill Clinton, showed up at. He was at all of them. Every single one of those locations. He never saw anything amiss. We saw him getting his massage, right? A little massage in the chair from a trafficked girl. No big deal, though. We'll just ignore that. No more. Now that the election is over, and I won't be contributing to the divisiveness of the election, the gloves are coming off when it comes to the Clintons, folks. Buckle up. I have had enough of the fawning over the Clintons, and I have certainly had enough of them lecturing me. Since then, 2 current lawmakers have also announced they will be donating the equivalent of past donations. Here's a nice one for you. This man right here is the epitome of hypocrite, the epitome of a backroom dealing, scummy politician. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat, New York, who had received about $22,000 from Epstein through his House and Senate campaigns and other affiliated joint fundraising committees between 92 and 99, announced that his campaign will be donating the same amount he received from Epstein to anti-sex trafficking and anti-violence against women groups. Schumer also gave away his past donations from Harvey Weinstein. See a pattern here? There's no trouble for these guys afterwards if they accept the donation. That's why they accept it. Then they can just come out and say, well, I had no idea who this person was or what they were up to. Bullshit. Harvey Weinstein was a known predator. People had been talking about it. Jeffrey Epstein, same story. Chucky Schumer, you're from New York, buddy. This is your state. You're the senior senator from New York. You didn't know this was going on? You have no idea this was going on, huh? But you have the audacity to tell me how I should live my life 3,000 miles away in Nevada? Here's an idea, buddy, and earmuffs for anybody who might be offended by this. Go get fucked. While these campaign accounts closed about 20 years ago, and even then the campaign never controlled the two political action committees, see what they're doing? We didn't have any control. It wasn't us. Don't blame us. It wasn't Senator Schumer. Deflect. Never takes responsibility for shit. None of these politicians. I'm tired of it. Senator Schumer is donating an equal sum to anti-sex trafficking and anti-violence against women groups, Schumer's spokesperson Justin Goodman told ABC News in a statement. Well, here's an idea. Why didn't he contact Virginia and donate that money to her charity? What charity did he donate the money to? What, one of his other friends' charities? They're going to double dip on that as well? I don't mean to be so cynical, folks, but after what we have witnessed for the past year, how can anyone have any faith in any of these people? On Tuesday, the New York senator called for the resignation of Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, who had cut a plea deal for Epstein and similar charges more than a decade ago. I agree with that. Acosta had to go. Acosta should have never been put into that position, and Acosta was a scumbag for his behavior in Florida, no doubt about it. But if you think it was all Acosta, your bias is showing. Acosta has bosses, and that shit went all the way up to Mukasey. And for Chuck Schumer to act like it was all Acosta, and for a certain segment of the political society to act like it was all Acosta is so disingenuous. Sure, Acosta should have been called out. The right thing was for him to resign. But Chuck bitch-ass Schumer, who took $22 grand in money from Jeffrey Epstein, has the audacity to get out there and call out Acosta? Sorry, Mr. Schumer. That shit's not going to fly anymore. You're going to be held to account. $22,000 from Jeffrey Epstein, the senior senator from New York, and people aren't flipping the fuck out? Sorry, folks. Party's over. Virgin Islands House delegate Stacey Plaskett, who received a total of $8,100 from Epstein in the 2016 and 2018 cycles, on Wednesday announced she will be donating the same amount to Virgin Island organizations that work with women and children, and called for other elected officials in the Virgin Islands to return any donations from Epstein. So, right here, a Virgin Islands House delegate took money from Epstein in 2016 and 2018. Now, where's the furor over that? Where are all of the hit pieces over that? Where's Julie K. Brown? Nowhere to be found, folks, when there's no political points to be scored. Well, unfortunately for these scuzzbags, I don't care about political points. I want the whole thing to burn. And Stacey Plaskett, you're a scuzzbag. 2016 and 18, you took donations from Epstein after everybody knew what he was? Probably the biggest scuzzbag in the whole entire article, honestly. I want it to be clear that I in no way support the allegations and have confidence in the Southern District of New York to investigate and prosecute the matter, Plaskett said in a statement. Sure, they're going to investigate. They'll probably ignore investigating her, though. I have no faith in any sort of fair search when it comes to these politicians. They have too much pull with the FBI. They have too much pull with these attorney generals. And that has to end. They can't be buddy-buddy, okay? They all have a job to do. And if they don't do their job, they need to be held responsible. This isn't the first time politicians have backtracked on Epstein's money. A spokesperson for Clinton's former energy secretary, Bill Richardson, confirmed to ABC News that Richardson received $50 grand from Epstein during his gubernatorial re-election campaign in New Mexico in 2006. Should we just ignore that too? Should we just ignore Bill Richardson being such a power player and a mover and shaker within the Democratic Party? Yet he got 50 grand from Epstein? Nah, no big deal, right? Let's not pay attention to that. Shh, don't talk about that. That'll give the other side political ammunition. It's gross. It's really gross to me, and I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. Bill Richardson should be put on blast. I have like 5 episodes about this dude on my podcast already. He's a piece of garbage, a snake, a career grifting politician who needs to be held accountable as well. But yet, somehow, no major exposés about Bill Richardson. Where's Julie K. Brown? The spokesperson told ABC News that Richardson donated the same amount to local charities when Epstein was first charged more than a decade ago and has not received any donations from Epstein since. Oh, well, in that case, everything's all good, man. Take it easy, Bill Richardson. Keep it moving. Not like you're accused of actually taking part in the abuse of Virginia, you scuzzy fucker. Just last year, Epstein gave $10,000 to Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, but the party committee returned the donation just days later. Now that's how it should occur. Props to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee from last year who got this money from Epstein and then days later returned it. No thank you. That's the proper course of action. Without second thought, the DCCC immediately refunded this unsolicited donation. DCC spokesperson told ABC News, that's perfect. That is a good move, and props to the Democratic Congressional Campaign for that. You don't want any money from this scumbag, especially now. Epstein in the 1990s through early 2000s gave to various now former lawmakers and politicians campaigns, including former senator from Connecticut and vice president nominee Joe Lieberman and former Representative Rick Lazio, Republican, New York, who ran unsuccessfully against Hillary Clinton for Senate in 2000. And that's another one of Epstein's moves, right? His MO. He loves to give money to people in his districts, these politicians that are going to be congressmen or senators, whatever it may be, but he loves to give them money so he gets favors from them. ABC News has reached out to Lieberman. Lazio told ABC News in a statement that the campaign accounts he received Epstein's donation through were closed many years ago and have no information or recollection of the donation beyond what is in the FEC database. Oh, I'm sure, Rick Lazio. You had never met Jeffrey Epstein, huh? He was never at any of your fundraisers. You guys never rubbed elbows. The Republicans are just as dirty as the Democrats here, folks. Don't get it twisted. And Rick Lazio is one of the worst, in my opinion. I never liked the guy, always thought he was a bit corrupt, and it doesn't shock me for 1 minute that he was receiving money from Jeffrey Epstein. New York in general is just straight up corrupt. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, it is literally a den of scum and villainy. I have been out of office for over 18 years and have no direct or indirect control over a campaign account, Lazio said. I believe that the purpose of a return of a contribution is that it then won't be used to further a political campaign. That would be irrelevant for me. No, you dumb asshole. That's not the point. The point is that you're showing and you're recognizing that this money came from an absolute scumbag. And you're giving that money back so you don't want to be associated with that person. It has nothing to do, it won't be used in further political campaigns. That's not even really the point. The optics. You people are the richest, most powerful people in the world. And you mean to tell me that nobody had any idea what Jeffrey Epstein was up to? All those times you scuzbags were on the plane with him. All those times you were hanging out at his mansions. Nobody had any idea what Jeffrey Epstein was up to, huh? I don't buy it. In fact, I think everybody had an idea what Epstein was up to. But there was so much money involved that none of our so-called overlords cared. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to everybody who has donated to the podcast, thank you folks very much. I'll be back tomorrow morning and we'll pick this conversation up then.